The end of January this year, a number of players who were part of the iBuyPower lineup, or former iBuyPower lineup, were banned for match fixing in a game that took place in, I think it was September of 2014. And one of these players was Swag, this young player. I think he was only 18 at this point in time still, not even 19 years old. And he's someone where, aside from just his career being over, the knock-on effect within the NA scene is something that I feel like will be felt for the next year, 2 years, as they see if they can develop more talent. Because this was someone who potentially, at least at certain points in his career, seemed like he should be one of the next NA stars, if not like the future star, as on a world scale we're talking here, not just within North America, top player, but potentially could one day be a great player in all of Counter-Strike. So let's go back in time. We'll kind of look over some aspects of his career and his game and talk about what the scene will now lack now that he's going to be gone. So this is someone where he actually started playing Counter-Strike at a very young age, because like I said, he's only like 18 now, and so when he started like pro level CS, like actually playing on the top level, he was 15 years old. Well, he started CS back at age 7 or something, I think he said in an old interview when he was just a youngin, and he'd been playing for, so he'd already been playing for, we're looking at 7-8 years before he gets to this pro level. He comes along as a 15-year-old kid in 2011, and he plays in a team that was called Full Gaming, and it had Semphis, it had Esquers in it, Sean Gers, and they finished second at ESEA LAN, the 9th one, Season 9 LAN. And at this point in time, the hype around Swag is like, this guy's the next Nothing. And at that point in time, you have to realise nothing had come up like this. He'd been the young 14, 15-year-old kid who everyone was like, wow, this kid's like a mad fragger. He's got really good skills. Like, wait, one day he's going to be like not only the next good player, but he's going to be like the next best player. And people were kind of putting all their hopes onto Nothing like that. Like, he'll be like the Forest of NA. And obviously, Nothing didn't quite live up to that. You had a little period where you thought he's getting close, and then he never really could get it done on that international level and become like the Neo, the Forest, the Marklov, or whatever you want of North America. He just stayed as a good North American player, but never quite ascended to that next echelon. Now with Swag, the whole thing started again. People were like, okay, Swag's going to be the next one. So he's playing with Semphis and Esquers here. He would play with the same lineup with like slight variations all the next ESEA lands. Won a couple of ESEA lands in 2012. At this point, they eventually had Nothing in the lineup for one of them. And then at the end of the year, he switches over when CSGO comes around. I think this was, let me think. Yeah, I think this is when CSGO just came out. He switched over to Dynamic, which was Adren, it was AZK, who also is now banned. Both these guys would later on go on to iBuyPower, and AZK would obviously play with Swag in iBuyPower most recently. And then you had a couple of players that you guys probably wouldn't know. You go into the ESEA, let me think. Okay, go into 2013 now. We're coming along to ESEA Season 13 LAN, which was the one where that Quantic team that was Semphis and Dazed and Frost, those guys, and Hiko, those guys managed to finish second in amazing fashion, beat out Very Games, lose to Nip in the final. But at this LAN, Swag's still with Dynamic. This time they've added in Nothing to the lineup. They've got Volcano, but they've still got Adren, they've got ACK. They finished like top 8, that's it. Nothing particularly impressive about this performance. At the time, people only really knew the Quantic team as the legit team from North America. These others, yeah, not really very much. Later on in the year, skip forward to the next ESEA LAN. You notice he's just playing at ESEA LANs this time, because that's all you had in North America. So he's just playing domestically. He's not going to big international LANs. He's not at that level yet. He's just still competing in North America. Finally, by the next ESEA LAN, the one that's like in the middle of the year, he's gotten onto Complexity. Now he's playing with Hiko, Semphis, Sean Gers, Nothing. Remember, he's played with Nothing before in Dynamic and one of the previous mixed teams. Well, it wasn't really a mixed team, but I think it was the full back-to-back it was called at the time, when it was the old Full Gaming lineup that won the ESEA in 2012. And he'd obviously played with Semphis and Esquers in that lineup. And Hiko, he hasn't actually played in a big team with, but Hiko's a member of this team, has come over from Quantic with Semphis. So they make this team, it becomes the best North American team. They have a similar run to what they'd actually had in Quantic back at the previous ESEA LAN. They finished second at this tournament, top 2 finish. Impressive performance overall. Now the last major, I fucked that up. I should say the last big event of that year for this team, Complexity, is the first major of CSGO. This was the DreamHack Winter 2013. And at this tournament, the key game that sets up a big run for Swag and Complexity, and this is his first big international LAN on this kind of scale, is that in the group stage, they're in the same group as Very Games. And at the time, Very Games is the number one team in the world. Has won all the big events coming into it, except the SWC. They finished second there. But they're the team that's been winning the big events. They've got all the top fours and stuff. They're on this big heater. And they play them on Inferno. And there was this big game where it goes to a very close win for the Complexity guys on the last round. And winning that map got them this favourable bracket draw where the two best teams, Very Games and Nip, are on the other side of the bracket. Now, that wasn't an easy bracket draw because the team they had to play in the round of 8 was Astana Dragons, and on paper Astana Dragons, which was like Markelov, Edward, Dosia, Adren, Angel, these guys were the number 3 team in the world. They were a team that had beaten Nip in a best of 3 offline when they'd got to that Star Series 7 LAN finals, lower bracket final or something. This was a team that was a dangerous team, and it was full of fraggers. So in this series, Swag's Complexity goes up against this team that on paper is supposed to beat them, but they managed to beat them in like quite an exciting 3-game series. They anti-strat them a bit. They get past them into the semi-finals, and now they're playing against Fnatic. Now, Fnatic wasn't some great team. Fnatic was like maybe let's say like the 5th, I think about the 4th or 5th best team. Actually, maybe probably like, yeah, 5th, I think about 5th best team in the world. I think that'd be reasonable to say. But the Coltrane tries super hard to anti-strat them. It totally backfires. Pronax reads the game very well. Easy wins, 16-7, 16-7 for Fnatic guys. They're into the final. They actually go on to win the whole tournament. But the first major, Swag and Complexity, and his first big international land, they've made it to the semi, the first big major. Now, after that, you go into 2014, results aren't initially as good, actually. The first ESEA Season 15 finals, they finished 3rd, but that was the one where iBuyPower shocks Titan and wins the event. But they finished 3rd, the Complexity lineup. They go to the next major, EMS1 Katowice. Now, they get out of this really tight group stage, where the core factor of this group stage was it was actually really kind of even as to who the best teams in it were, because I think it was their Complexity, there was Clan Mystic, which is Kenny S's team with Kiyoshima, and unless I'm mistaken, I think that was the LAN where Fnatic was also in that group. And I forget who the 4th one was, but it was quite an evenly distributed group in that particular sense. Actually, that could be wrong. Whatever, forget about it, we're not stopping. So they get out of the group. Now they manage to survive the group, and they get drawn, as luck would have it, they get NIP as the team that they have to play in the round of 8. Fuck, you know what I just realised? He had actually played International LAN before the DreamHack Winter Final, because they made it to ESWC round of 8 and lost to Nip there. So scratch that part, but we've now updated it, so we're keeping going. So in the round of 8 of EMS1 Katowice, they play Nip in the round of 8. And you have to realise this is the Nip that, okay, they haven't won an event in ages, but they're still Nip. They only lose to elite level teams in best of 3s. They always make top 2, top 4, whatever it is. They're amazing. In fact, they've never made below top 4 at this point in time. So what, is Cole going to be the first team to knock them out in a round of 8, are they? Turns out no. But in the first map, Dust 2, Swag goes fucking nuts. He drops like 30 frags on Nip. He wins this like 1v4 in the B site. He has probably the best game of his whole career, maybe even to this day. Goes absolutely nuts. They lose the next 2 maps, and overall the series, they didn't really have that much chance to actually win the other 2 maps. Nip overall was in control enough. So in the end, it ends up being like, okay, you got to have the big game, but Nip still prevails because they're the better team. But over the whole series even, Swag had a really good series. Even that 30 kills, it's not like he then fell off on the other ones and just went to crap. He had a strong series overall. He was the guy where I felt like his level was good enough that it was in position, that his team could have won if everyone else had been at a better level, but that the others weren't. We didn't have a caliber of team to play a team like Nip, especially with how famously, Nip's map pool was very broad and very deep at that time, so it was hard to beat them on more than one. And actually, what's interesting is Dust 2 would come up again and again in Swag's career as one of his best maps to fit his lurking style. So after this tournament, what's amazing is you'd think after beating Nip on Dust 2 and getting to the round of 8 at the next major, you'd think, right, the team's going to stick together and try and work on things and hope that they think, no. Actually, towards the end of the month, I think it was like the 23rd or the 24th of March or something, Swag leaves Complexity and goes and joins iBuyPower, their big rivals. Now, yes, iBuyPower had won the ESEA LAN, but iBuyPower had gone to DreamHack Winter Major, and they'd bombed in the group stage. They'd gone to EMS1 Katowice, and they'd bombed in the group stage. So amazingly, he goes to the team that, yes, domestically is the best, but internationally is a train wreck. He goes to this team. Now, it starts out great. Again, domestically, they managed to beat Complexity to win SEVO season. They win ESEA Season 16. Again, they managed to beat some of the European teams and be ahead of them and beat Cole again. They win a title there. They go over to Gfinity in Europe. They have an impressive group stage performance. They have a pretty solid map against Titan in the first. I think it was Dust 2 was the first game. That was a solid one. But then they lose the series 2-0. They're out in the round of 8. But at least they got out in the group stage in that tournament. Go beyond that, they go to the next major. Now, remember, Swag's never failed in the group stage of a major. He was in Complexity before. This time, he gets brought into the whole curse of iBuyPower. They fail in the group stage of their third straight major, his first failure in the group stage, and they're out like that. They go back home, same old story. They dominate. They win CVOP Season 15 LAN. I mean, they didn't really dominate. Like, these are always close games when they play Cold, but they always win the domestic LAN. That's the point. They're always the best there. Now, interestingly, when they now go to face it Season 2 LAN, no one's expecting them to have a big finish here. Because of all the teams, there's only 6 there. Well, they're the ones that always bomb. They always bomb in Europe, particularly. In fact, that's what I mean. They always bomb in European LANs. They don't have a good run in overall. Meanwhile, you've got teams like Fnatic, LDLC, Virtus.pro, Dignitas. It's not looking like they're going to have a chance, but actually they go on this miracle run to the top 2. They make it to second place overall. Swag has a really big Dust 2 game, another one of his career against Dignitas. He completely rolls them there. Also on Dust 2 at the same tournament, I remember particularly his Dust 2 was very good then. So against LDLC in the semi-finals, he was part of that. They'd obviously won a big epic game on Inferno as well. In the final, they managed to win Dust 2 against Fnatic. He's a big part of why they were able to do that. Good tournament for him, very good tournament for his team. So you're thinking, right, well, awesome. Now they've just broken through. They've made their first final of international European, a big international LAN final at a European LAN for any North American team in CSGO. So what's going to happen, right? Oh, we're going to stick with this. We're going to see how it goes for DreamHack Winter. No, again, as happened before in Swag's career, there's some weird trend where at the point where you think he's going to stick with things, some out of left field move comes and he's in somehow part of it. So the decision's made before DreamHack Winter to remove Daze, the in-game leader, and a guy who just dropped 50 on fucking LDLC in the semi-final of Face It Season 2 LAN. Remove Steel, who apparently he was going to quit at some point anyway, but whatever, still, that was the lineup that got you to the final, got you second place. You'd think they'd stick with that. Removes them, brings in Desi, like a guy who's like okay, but hasn't done much, just domestic stuff, and Nitro, who at the time was a nobody, an absolute nobody. Now, yeah, we've seen Nitro's turned out to be a bit of a talent later, but this is actually quite a shocking move to bring in. And so they go to DreamHack Winter, and the hype is the same as historically has always been for these iBuyPower teams. They're holding it up in the boot camp and they're going to do so well. And then they come to the LAN, and they have the easiest group probably ever in the history of a major in CSGO, because since Titan had been disqualified, instead you got these other teams into that group where the group was Penta, Copenhagen Wolves, Team Dignitas, and iBuyPower. Now in this group, they managed to beat, I think it was Copenhagen Wolves first. They lose to Dignitas. Obviously, Dignitas is full of sick aimers. Was that even the way it went? It might have gone the other way. They might have lost to Dignitas first, then played Dignitas a second time after beating Copenhagen Wolves. I forget the order, but the key thing is the final map is against Penta, who were nobodies. They're just this team from Germany. One most famous thing about them was some of them apparently cheated. That's what everyone knows about Penta, and they're online, as everyone says, and they wouldn't have gotten in if it wasn't for all this bullshit qualifier, etc. So anyway, they get to this final, to the final game of the group to decide who's going to get out in second place. And they're playing Penta, they're playing one Inferno, and actually they managed to give up this ridiculous amount of rounds towards the end of the game, completely blow it, choke uber hard, and they're out of the major in group stage again. Now the second time that's happened to Swag, and then the fourth time for this iBuyPower lineup. And then you add in the context of they kicked out Daze Steel. It just looks silly at this point in time. It looks really stupid. So anyway, they go home. They go to ESEA Season 17, and they've still got Nitro in the lineup here. He has a Monster LAN. What happened at this one? Yeah, that was the one where obviously they managed to beat out... Was that the tournament? I think that was the tournament where they beat Titan. I think they might have done it in that one. Managed to finish third overall. They lose to Fnatic. Fnatic goes on to win the event from the lower bracket. And that's essentially Swag's career, because after that, with the MLG tour, after that, there was the point where they did the break apart, and now they were going to bring in Hiko and Dazed back into the lineup, and now they were going to make the super team, the NA super team, which is going to be Swag, AZK, Dazed, Hiko, and it was Skadoodle. That was going to be the super team, which on paper would have been a lot of people in NA's super team of like the best players. You have like the best Dorper, Skadoodle, best Clutcher / Lurker, that's Swag. You have the best Fragger, Hiko, at least historically. The best in-game leader, Dazed. The best at being from France and having a name like AZK and being consistent. Yeah, that's AZK. So there's the 5-man. That's going to be the super team, right? Everyone's hyped. But then They can't go to MLG. They left their organization by power because apparently they were going to be picked up by someone bigger. But that all falls apart because of this whole match fixing scandal where they're going to get banned and what's going to happen. And in the end, the bans come through. So there's Swag's career. So yeah, it had a couple of high points, had some nice domestic results once he got to by power, had a couple of nice results internationally when he was in Complexity. Never quite reached the zenith of where you wanted it to be. The progression was going up, but it never quite got there. Now let's talk about his skills. In terms of overall package, I always thought he was quite a well-rounded player in terms of he wasn't super inconsistent. He was one of the more consistent NA players where you kind of knew what you're going to. He wasn't the guy, by the way, in general, who'd just rock up 3 or 4 kill rounds all the time. He'd be the plugging away, the 1-2 kills type player, that sort of consistency. Overall package, I think he was the 3rd best NA player overall. To me, the 2 best NA players were, historically it was Hiko, but in the latter days it was Skadoodle. So Skadoodle and Hiko, top 2. And then 3rd, we'll go with Swag at that point in time. Skilled player, particularly good with rifles. Wasn't really an AWP, you wouldn't see that much. Just a rifler. And what's interesting about his rifling style was there's a bit of bursting involved in it. And also I think he was a bit better actually at medium to long range. He would take a lot of medium range battles. He wouldn't just try and get super close range on everyone. He had quite a bit of confidence in that long range aim, that burst aim. Because if you have the burst technique down, you don't have to get as close to hope you can spray and get some good percentages out of that. Like I said, he was good on Dust too. He had a pretty decent nuke as well, I think. In terms of other skills, let's think. Famously, his position, his role within the game, he was the lurker. And because he was a lurker, he was getting kills in people's backs, he was creating a bit of havoc, he was rotating around, and because he's always rotating to the site in general as a principle, he's getting into a lot of clutch situations. And he's a good clutch player, probably the best in NA. I mean, we remember the 1v4 famously against Nip, but he would have 1v1s and 1v2s he would win. He was pretty decent under pressure in that sense. What's weird is in that role, he was good under pressure. He would win 1v1s, 1v2s. But in terms of overall huge games at international tournaments, we've seen some of those games at the 2 majors that they failed. Sometimes he would have lower level in as much as he wasn't he choked overall. He would still be good in his role, but sometimes wouldn't bring the same level of delivery as all of by Power suffered with in those couple of tournaments they had those problems in. Going beyond that, the problem with Swag's career is, I've described a lot of the positives here. He was so important to the NA scene on almost every level. In terms of skills, I just said he was the 3rd best NA player. You can't lose the 3rd best NA player. Immediately, the NA scene's taking a skill level drop in terms of their best teams, how good their teams can be, because they're losing some firepower. In terms of composure, they didn't have many players in NA who were big game players or who would win these 1vx situations in big tournaments. You needed that. He was the best at that. All-around game. Again, we don't have that many all-around players in NA. We have Skadoodle's a super sick AWPer. And then we have Hiko's probably the only other really all-round player. Then we have wild young talents like Nitro. Who've we got? We've got the Peter guy coming up now in CLG. We've got talents. We've got talent in different areas, but well-rounded, polished. Yeah, not to such a degree actually. And this is a guy who's built up experience over these last few years. Now in the last year and a half, he's been going to international tournaments. He's having results there. He's having big games there. He's having big games against Dignitas, against Fnatic, LDLC, NIP. He's now getting the experience, the tenure where I don't think his level would have gone up massively. I think having this better team, he would have had a chance to win and get to semis and maybe a final of a major. But in terms of progression, he only needs a little bit more progression. He's getting close to that top level in Europe. Not quite, but there is a progression there where it's not unrealistic to suggest he could have continued to get better and become a greater player the next year. In the same way as Kiyoshima and Kenny S, we've seen them progress over CSGO. Not only for skills, composure, all-around game, crucially, his personality was really enormous for the NA scene. This is going to sound very weird because anyone who knows him, he's actually a fairly quiet guy. He's not an argumentative sort of guy. So as a result, you're going to think, what do you mean his personality? Because he's not like a guy who's going to buoy up the spirits of the team and who's going to be... But actually, that's crucial. The thing that had torn the NA scene apart for so many years, and I'll probably do a video about this one day, is people shit-talking and hating each other and just having vendettas and grudges against this guy and he never wants to play with that guy. Or they want to play with people that are a social aspect here and they want to do this and that and the other. And so someone like Swag, who's really good and has all these extra talents around him, talents within his game, you need someone like him because that's one less person where he's going to get in arguments with everyone. As far as I know, almost every other top-level pro wanted to play with Swag, and if they'd have made their dream team, he would have been the first name definitely in it out of everyone. They might have said not to this one, not to this one, not to this one. but they did definitely had swag in there. Everyone would have. So that's absolutely crucial. I mean, supposedly the reason why he didn't join iBuyPower early on in the CSGO days, I remember Days saying this, was that supposedly he wanted to play at Swag, this is, with Complexity, because those were his friends. He's friends with Nothing and those sorts of guys, and Semphis and SKS. He wanted to play with those guys again. So later on, he chose like the hardcore, the winning route. He went to iBuyPower. He had the personality to fit in with the sorts of talents we needed in NA if we wanted to have that one World Championship team, which it looked like at the end they just made, and then they got banned for the cheating thing. So as it stands right now, apparently he's like banned indefinitely. I fucking hate that term for starters. What? So if we get a life extension technology, you can't play in 700 years, Valve. Okay, cheers. That's a reasonable system. But no, it sounds like his career's over in terms of being a CSGO pro. So I kind of wrapped it up there. We're not going to see him again, unfortunately. But he was someone where, if you wanted to look at a lineup where could this ever be a World Championship team, he would have definitely been on my shortlist of 3 or 4 players who have to be in that NA major winning team. And so now that he's gone, it's not that hope's over for the NA scene, but now new people have to come through. New people have to appear who can provide these tools, these skills to a team and the role they can play in a way that at the moment we're not going to have, because they haven't got the experience and they haven't proven it yet. And so that's the career of Swag.